Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. The European Union, Britain and Japan, along with 24 other nations, including Canada and Australia, call for immediate measures to stop what they describe as unfolding famine in Gaza. Their joint statement warns that humanitarian suffering in the Strip has reached unimaginable levels and requires swift, coordinated action. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Moscow is not seeking peace but readying new attacks, days before a meeting between Russian and US leaders. He warns Russian troop movements signal fresh offensive operations. The United States and China extend their tariff truce for 3 months, avoiding triple-digit duties on each other's goods. President Donald Trump says higher tariffs are suspended until November the 10th under his new executive order. Israeli planes and tanks bombard eastern Gaza City overnight, killing at least 11 people, witnesses and medics have said. Hamas leader Khalil al-Hayya is also heading to Cairo for talks on reviving a US-backed 60-day truce and hostage release deal. A 4-year-old boy dies of heat stroke in Italy as extreme temperatures put cities across France, Italy and the Balkans on red alert. Wildfires forced thousands to evacuate and threaten tourist sites in Turkey and Spain amid a persistent heat dome over Europe. US consumer inflation remains at 2.7% year-on-year in July, but underlying price pressures increase as President Donald Trump's tariffs impact the economy. The data comes amid growing concerns over its reliability and central bank assessments. A Thai soldier suffers a severe ankle injury after stepping on a landmine while patrolling near the Cambodian border, the army says. The incident comes days after the neighbours agreed to a ceasefire following last month's deadly clashes. Torrential rains on São Vicente Island in Cape Verde killed 8 people, including 1 by electrocution and 3 missing. Floodwaters swamp roads, sweep away vehicles and overwhelm emergency services. We start our hour in the defining crisis of the Middle East, where the European Union, Britain and Japan have called for urgent action to stop what they have said is a famine in the Gaza Strip. A joint statement signed by EU's top diplomat and foreign ministers from 24 countries, including Canada and Australia, has been issued, stating that the humanitarian suffering in Gaza has reached unimaginable levels. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, has also called for Israel to provide authorization for all international NGO aid shipments and unblock essential humanitarian access from operating in Gaza. We're now joined by our guest, Ali Bushback. He's an independent Palestinian researcher. He joins us live from Cairo. Ali, thank you very much for joining us to discuss this topic. Ali, this comes with mounting pressure, of course, from Western governments. They are openly calling this a famine. This is much to the contradict of what Israel is saying. They're saying that the famine in Gaza is not real and that Hamas are stealing the aid, preventing it getting to the Palestinians that need it. What's happening to cause this quote-unquote famine in Gaza?
Thank you, Thomas. I guess it's clear the international community transformed from the Israelis' narrative to the ground narrative, from the grassroots Palestinian who describe the situation. I guess the credibility of Israelis media or Israelis policy or Israelis government has been lost by the international community and the international actor, because we have seen several of European countries that condemning Israelis policy on the ground. We have witnessed also the tsunami of recognition of Palestinian statehood as a diplomatic way to solve the issue between Palestinian and Israel. So also, Thomas, today, 5 Palestinian, among of them children, a girl have been died because of the malnutrition, and since past that happened since past 24 hours. So the things is situation is completely terrible, and I mean, in front of the international community, Israel allow for a limit of humanitarian aid truck to enter Gaza, and usually force the truck to take unsafe route during their journey to their place. So we have seen several of Israeli policy deliberately targeting civilians who's seeking food and who's attempting to collect food. This kind of limit, several of organization, several of international organization, local organization have been confirmed this is not
Ali,
sufficient for the Palestinian needs. So this is transformation from the international community putting the pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu, and they consider it as a last shoot or a last bullet to force Benjamin Netanyahu to take a step back from its plan to control Gaza or fully occupied Gaza.
Ali, are foreign governments doing enough to help the humanitarian crisis in Gaza? Formerly Israeli allies, still Israeli allies, as most put it, including the UK and France, etc. However, you mentioned the narrative that has changed in regards to their thinking and their statements. How has this happened?
Thomas, unfortunately, despite the wave of condemnation and also the demanding from Israel, it has no meaning. Since there is no action on the ground, it has no meaning. This is to justify their community, because as we have witnessed, there is a massive of protest in Germany. We have seen more than 100,000 of protesters. They participate in a protest in Australia. We have several of protests in UK. So this is as a response to the demand of the community and the international also organization who describe equally the situation on the ground. Despite Israel rejected, despite Israelis media, they deny this fact. So I guess the international community also, even Donald Trump, he confirmed there is a famine and starvation in Gaza. And we have seen during the Benjamin Netanyahu's conference last time, he tried to avoid the direct answer for this question. Despite Donald Trump, he confirmed there is a starvation, and Israeli media, they are thinking that by denying it will help them. But unfortunately, on the ground footage and photo and videos, it's released and describe the situation more than war.
Yes,
and,
Ali.
Thomas.
Yes, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have ran out of time. I really appreciate your insight on that. We will, of course, bring you updates as we get them coming in from the crisis in Gaza. However, now we move over to the United States for our next story, where President Donald Trump announced he is considering allowing a major lawsuit against Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell to proceed, accusing him of mismanaging the construction of Federal Reserve buildings. Trump claimed that $3 billion was spent on projects that should have cost only $50 million, describing Powell's performance as horrible and grossly incompetent. Trump also repeated his call for the FED to cut interest rates, blaming Powell for causing incalculable damage to the US economy by being too late on monetary policy decisions. He claimed that despite these issues, the economy is strong enough to have blown through Powell and the federal board. The specifics of the lawsuit remain unclear. We are now joined by Arvind Mahajan Lamar. He's a savings professor of finance at Texas A&M University. He's located in College Station. Thank you very much for joining us, Arvind. Let's get straight into this. First of all, Trump threatens FED chair Jerome Powell with a major lawsuit over HQ renovation costs. What's your take on this?
Well, it's a very unusual situation. Typically, having tension between the Fed and the executive branch is nothing unusual. The president's policies sometimes can conflict with the role which is assigned to the Fed in the US government. And so that disagreement can result in tension. And in this administration, that tension is very palpable. One of the spin-offs of that tension is this threatened lawsuit. And this is very, very unconventional because this is the construction of buildings or renovation of buildings, which the president claims the Fed has done a poor job in managing the costs of, and they have increased from 2.7 billion to 3.1 billion. The Fed is not in the business of construction. The president, of course, given his background, was in the business of construction and development. So this is a very unusual case. And I think to an observer on the sidelines, this clearly is an extension of the issue of federal funds rate, interest rates, which President wants the Fed chair to reduce, and which the Fed chair so far has been reluctant to. So I don't think anyone is seeing this really as a construction issue lawsuit. People are seeing this as a continuation of a conversation which has been going on for quite a long time.
Yes, Arvind. We obviously have constant pressure coming from Trump over rate cuts and feud. How long until Powell resigns, if you think he might, possibly? And does Donald Trump have the power to fire him?
That is a legal question which has been not tested. That has been a question which has been raised. That situation has not emerged in the past. So this will be something very unusual. If I have to conjecture, the chairman of the Fed will not resign, will fulfill his term, and the president then will appoint a new chair of the Fed. That is my conjecture, because the chair of the Fed seems to be someone with a spine and somebody who does not capitulate to pressure. So I don't think the resignation is in the works as much as the president would like to replace the chairman of the board.
Arvind, how is this affecting the economy if Trump selects a Federal Reserve chair overly focused on inflation?
Well, the question is not the Fed chair who is predominantly focused on inflation. That is the job of the chairman of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, but that is just one part of the job. The other part of the job is full employment. As you know, the Fed's mandate is twofold. One, provide full employment, and the other is price stability. Price stability goes with inflation, but it's also the job of the Fed to ensure that there is full employment. And that is where the tension right now is, where on one hand, the Fed does not want to reduce the interest rates, because it is concerned that inflation will pick up. On the other hand, the president wants the Fed to reduce the interest rates so that the economic activity picks up and the numbers look even better, even though they might translate into inflation down the road.
Arvind, thank you very much for your insight and joining us here on the program. Pleasure. to get your thoughts on that.
Thank you.
We now move on and over to Europe, where as Russian President Vladimir Putin prepares to meet US President Donald Trump, many Ukrainians have expressed deep skepticism about the talks, saying they expect no real change and no peace to come from them. This comes after Trump said he is open to holding a trilateral summit in Alaska with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, according to a White House official. Let's take a closer look at what they had to say.
Я думаю, що не варто від них взагалі нічого очікувати, бо цих переговорів було вже більш ніж достатньо і жодного разу ніяких хоч скількись помітних результатів не було взагалі.
И я считаю, что встреча Путина и Трампа ничего не изменит, потому что обещаний было много. И я считаю, что это вранье, и ничего не изменится. В любом случае Украина будет воевать дальше, и я надеюсь, что мы победим.
We're now joined by Professor Veselin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Law School. Thank you very much, Professor Popovsky, as always, for discussing this with us. The possibility of a trilateral meeting, it sounds very striking, although it doesn't seem as if the Russian president wants this. Why is Vladimir Putin so against, seemingly, directly meeting with the Ukrainian president, along with, of course, Donald Trump?
Obviously, Thomas, Vladimir Putin wants one-to-one meeting with Donald Trump, somehow to get out of the isolation he has been over the last 3.5 years. So it's a very big informational victory for Putin to have a photo opportunity with Donald Trump, to be hosted in Alaska, the US territory. And he will play this very well. He's master in manipulation and games like this. He will present that Russia's invasion in Ukraine has been legitimized, and Russia is happy to talk about the global order, the borders, the future security, and everything else, escaping from the sanctions and from the pressure which has been under the last 3.5 years very heavy, hitting the Russian economy. So the meeting in Alaska is useless without Zelensky, and it will be a small victory for Putin, but Trump is going to lose all his credibility because nobody will believe him anymore. He imposed 12 days of moratorium and promised heavy sanctions on Russia if they don't stop the fire. And the day when the ultimatum expired, Donald Trump invites Putin, instead of putting sanctions on Putin, he invites Putin to visit him in Alaska. So it's exactly the opposite of what Donald Trump said 1 week ago. And with that president of the United States in the White House, very, very little can be expected.
Professor Popovsky, obviously many Ukrainians, along with many Ukrainian allies, have raised deep skepticisms about this meeting. Donald Trump obviously wants peace, but people don't think that there's going to be any movement here. If does Donald Trump also thinks this, or do you think that he sees an opportunity for real negotiation here?
Well, if Donald Trump wants peace and wants to become a Nobel Peace Laureate, there is one thing he can do. He can arrest Putin on arrival in Alaska and deliver him to a war crime tribunal. The war will stop immediately if Donald Trump does that. And it doesn't take much. He can dispatch some force to Alaska, less than the one he dispatched in Washington, D.C., neutralize the bodyguard of Putin and arrest him and deliver him to a tribunal. Next day, he will be announced as a peace Nobel laureate. Not only that, he will be remembered in the 22nd century, despite all of his incompetent and impotent ideas so far. Arresting Putin in Alaska is the only way that Donald Trump can deliver peace in Ukraine. Everything else will prolong the war. because a meeting without any outcome, where Vladimir Putin will feel like the master of the show, and he can say anything, he can promise anything, he will probably give some presents to Donald Trump to please him, and he would like to present the meeting as the two biggest global leaders sitting together and deciding the future of the world. All of this delivers nothing. The Europeans are united.
Yes.
Not only Europeans, the world is united against all of this talk because they are against international law, against the UN Charter. Without Ukraine on the table, there will be absolutely no outcome of this show, this photo opportunity.
Yes, Professor Popovsky, thank you very much for joining us on that topic. We will, of course, bring you everything Russia-Ukraine leading up to that huge meeting on August the 15th. However, we move back over to the Middle East, where Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayad Safadi welcomed Syrian Foreign Minister Assad al-Shabani and US Envoy Thomas Barak in Amman. They met to discuss rebuilding a war-torn Syria. These talks come after Damascus, led by President Bashar al-Assad, signed 12 deals worth $14 billion. These include a $4 billion airport project with Qatar's UCC Holding and a $2 billion subway project with the UAE's National Investment Corporation. The Murriet al-Nuthun in northwest Syria, civil defense teams began rebuilding this earlier. They are recycling rubble from destroyed buildings. Syria's 14-year civil war ended in December with Assad's ouster. The conflict left much of the country's infrastructure in ruins. We're now joined by Jordan Cope, who is a Middle East expert, and he joins us live from Dallas, USA. Thank you very much, Jordan, for joining us here on the program. As always, pleasure to have you. What is the significance of Jordan hosting both Syria's foreign minister and US envoy at the same time, given Washington's history with Damascus and obviously the lifting of these sanctions?
Jordan's been a long time and traditional ally of the United States, a relationship that has largely dated back to the Cold War years. And so right now, Jordan is trying to emphasize and project its power in a region. It has been airdropping aid packages into Gaza, and it's trying to reassert its position in the Middle East, especially at a time when many have raised concerns about the prospects of the monarchy's long-term stability. And so that's really how Jordan's trying to leverage its position right now. And of course, it has an interest in strengthening a country to its northwest that has faced serious refugee issues in the last decade. So Jordan, in essence, might want to counter the Iran access, which once went through Syria to Lebanon, by ensuring the strength of a regime that supports a Sunni Islamist agenda, which might conflict a bit with Jordan's trajectory, but at least isn't so existential at the same time.
Yes, Jordan, just quickly, just before we run out of time, what does this $14 billion investment reveal about Gulf countries' strategic investments in post-war Syria?
Gulf countries have long been invested in the outcome of Syria, and one must not forget the Cold Wars during the Arab Spring, in which Qatar backed Hayat Tahrir al-Sham alongside Turkey, even though Turkey's not a Gulf nation. It should be noted that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is now effectively the ruling party in power in Syria, despite once being a US-designated terrorist group. I'm quite concerned right now that many countries are investing in a regime that has proven itself to be destructive and to be supportive of ISIS-style policies. We recently saw attacks that reportedly killed upwards of 1,700 Druze in Suwaida, Syria. 700 were reportedly still kidnapped. And a few months earlier, we also saw that same regime and their supporters killing approximately 1,300 to 1,400 Alawites in the country. The most recent attacks on Suwaida have apparently caused $2 billion in damage, according to local community members, and Suwaida continues to remain under siege. Now, the United States, I mean, the Sueda attacks happened after the US lifted sanctions on Syria and undesignated Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. So I think the world really needs to be cautious at the same time where that money is going.
Jordan Cope, pleasure to talk to you here on the programme. We now move over to Europe, where extreme heat and strong winds generated fire wells as a wildfire destroyed several houses and forced the evacuation of hundreds of people near a UNESCO World Heritage National Park in northern Spain, authorities have said. Around 800 people were ordered to leave their homes in 6 villages in the northern Castile and Leon region, where multiple wildfires were burning. Residents of Congosta town were used their garden hoses to spray houses, trees and streets in an effort to protect them from the flames that destroyed at least 2 buildings, while police warned them to get ready for evacuation. Reports indicate that Portugal is facing 3 major wildfires in the mountainous northern region, leading to evacuations and testing firefighters' efforts. A fire in the municipality of Trancoso has threatened homes in Portugal too, with struggles remaining in an escalating wildfire season. Portugal sent reinforcements on Monday to fight 3 major wildfires as the country remains on high alert. We are now joined by our guest, Vibhuti Rai, the Dean of Faculty of Science at Lucknow University. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Rai, on this developing story coming out of Europe. What are the atmospheric and climactic conditions that typically lead to the formation of wildfires like this? And why are we seeing such an escalating pattern of it, especially in Europe, where wildfires were not so common before?
Well, it's basically the temperatures rising beyond 40 degrees Celsius in the region, which is not very usual for this part, these months of August. At the same time, we have a circulation system which has started last week or so, when big winds are actually helping in the blowing up of the fires, especially in the Balkan region and also southeastern Europe. Most of the regions is showing temperatures rising beyond 30 degrees to 40 degrees. In Spain, it's expected that by the weekend it would be 44 degrees or so. So this is not very usual, and somewhere we have to look at the aspect of the climatic change and the global warming scenario, because that has set a circulation system which is kind of chaotic. In one part of the world, especially the monsoons in India and its surrounding areas, it's creating havoc, a lot of landslides and a lot of rains, whereas in the southern European part, we have very strong, there's hardly any rains, and we are seeing continuous high temperatures. So this has something to do with the aspect of the climate, and somewhere we have to look how the pattern is going to build up. I hope by the end of the week or so, the temperatures may calm down. But in the meantime, Morocco and other surrounding areas of Spain is seeing a lot of problems, especially in terms of shifting people in thousands. And the government there has perhaps indicated that the areas where the wildfires are there, people should leave those regions. Some of the forest cover there has a lot of these eucalyptus, and these are very flammable ones, and pine trees. So those are actually adding fuel to the fire. I think some in the surrounding areas, in the Balkans, some countries have supplied with the water bombers to calm down the fires. It's taking shape, but it's very difficult condition at the moment.
Thank you very much, Professor Rai, for giving your insight on that topic. Pleasure to have you here on the programme. We now move on once again. However, that is all that we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you for joining us.